cloud. Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining, in this group session called Land a Job Across the Globe. Today, we have 4 panelists, very, very special guests in our session today. We have Bruno, Ming-E, Josie, and Ryan. We'll let them introduce themselves a little bit later to kind of share their experiences, how they land a different job from different countries, their success and failures. Later on, we'll also be using a fake jam board to kind of let you ask questions, follow-up questions. But before we get into that, we'll get our panelists to introduce themselves first. So we're just gonna go with Bruno first. So Bruno, if you want to introduce yourself, what you're doing now, how you move from, what country you came from, where you're at now, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Bruno. I'm a lead designer working at Copperleaf Technologies right now here in Canada. And I am a designer for almost 8 years now, and I started in Brazil. So yeah, I was planning my immigration for almost 3 years or something, to have everything that you need to succeed in your immigration plan. You need to sort a lot of things out during this. But anyhow, yeah, I was working in with different companies in São Paulo, which is a city of Brazil. And yeah, I worked at Accenture. I was, working as a lead designer there, developing some bank applications. And then I started to work at Copperleaf 1.5 years ago when I arrived in Canada. And yeah, it's been a pretty nice journey so far. It's not easy for sure, because we are changing our culture, we are changing, our country, we are leaving our family behind and all that stuff. But I think it's worth it in the end.
Thank you, Bruno. That's fantastic. I would love to learn about how, design is different from Brazil and, in Canada. But that's really cool. Thank you for the introduction. And we'll move on to Ming-E. How about you?
Hey, everyone. Thanks, Eva. Hi, I'm Ming-E, and thanks for joining. Hope everyone's going to enjoy it. A little bit about me. So I'm a senior product designer currently based in Sydney. And where I was born was in a very small town in North England in UK. And when I first moved out, it was when I went to university, 18 years old, somewhere that was a little bit more diverse in UK. And after graduating with a graphic design degree, I managed to find a job in my hometown, which is very small, just to basically get a year's experience before trying to conquer a bigger city or even a different country. So I moved to London after a year at home, doing graphic design and digital design, and doing some freelance stuff on the side as well. So I was in London for about 2.5 years working in e-commerce and creative advertising. Also visited like lots of different European countries whilst being in London, just because it was so easy and cheap to kind of fly over for 2 hours and be in a total different place. And I visited the capital of Germany, Berlin, which I found amazing. And when I got back to London, I was applying for jobs in Berlin and Sydney as well, because I already was thinking about living in Sydney one day. I just didn't know when or where like exactly that would happen. But I managed to actually land a job in Berlin first. So it was kind of like, I didn't really have any reason to not take it. So I moved and lived in Berlin, and I worked for a fashion tech company, and it was quite a big company. It was a big corporation of like 11,000 employees at the time. And the main language was English. And it was really, really diverse. So that was really, really good experience. And then after Berlin for 1.5 years, I decided to make the move to Sydney. A little bit different this time. I applied for a working holiday visa because I'm from the UK. luckily kind of got a year to explore, and I went there without a job. So I guess I've had different experiences in the sense of applying for a job first and getting there, or like going somewhere new and not having a job. But I think at that point for that move, I had 4 years experience in the design industry. So I myself, I was a little bit more confident by that point to try and conquer Sydney, let's say. So yeah, I guess one of the things that I've written down here as well, one of the quotes that kind of stuck with me whilst kind of moving around on my own in different places was the urge of wanting to see things outweighs the fear of going alone. So anyone in the call who's thinking about moving country and starting from scratch with a new job, new friends, it's a really good adventure. And even joining this call, I hope everyone gets the answers to the questions that they're looking for. Yeah, that's kind of me.
Story, Ming-E. I'm so jealous. You were in UK, you were in Berlin, you get to travel all the cool countries and cities in Europe. Unlike people, I don't know, I mean in Canada, going to Toronto is like 5 hours flight. Not very easy to go to. But yeah, I would love to get to know about your kind of transition. But on top of my head, maybe people are also curious, what's your favorite city or country that you worked at out of all?
Oh, it's so different for different reasons. I think Berlin is very creative, and the lifestyle as well. It's quite cheap to live there. I don't speak German, but I was learning and it's very hard. But luckily English, a lot of people spoke English, and it's, yeah, I can't really say. There's so many good things about all the places. Really.
That's okay. You can tell us later. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And we'll be using FigJam for our conversation later. If you want to hop on the board, feel free to do so. There's a bit more detailed introduction of our panelists. And if you want to kind of start jotting down questions you want to ask, feel free to do so as well. I'll be sharing my screen later for people who maybe on their phone can access the board. But we'll move on to Josie. How about you? What's your story?
Yes. Hello. Hi. Thanks everyone for joining, whatever time zone you are in. So it seems like everyone is nighttime, except for Ming-E and I. So I'm in Hong Kong, and I'm actually originally from Seattle, so from the US, so very close to Vancouver. It seems like there's a lot of BC people here. Yeah, so I'm from Seattle, and I started school in San Francisco. So I went to art school, advertising, graphic design school there. And I did a lot of random internships and worked at coffee shop jobs there. So that's kind of where I kickstarted my design career. And then I spent 4 or 5 years in New York. So originally I went to school for traditional advertising, like broadcast, TV, radio. And my first real internship was in New York with a digital advertising agency. So back then it was like flash websites, microsites, and rich media banners, if anyone can remember those. So more like interactive screens and seeing your cool ads on Times Square. That was really interesting. So similar to Ming-E, I was also traveling. I went with my cousin at the time. We went through like a spiritual family journey. Originally, it was supposed to be our whole family was supposed to go from China to Vietnam, because my family is Chinese and Vietnamese. But we've been talking about this for decades and decades, and we've never gone. So finally, my cousin and I said, screw it, let's just go together. So we went maybe like 7 years ago. So we did a tour of Beijing, Shanghai, and Hong Kong. So similar to Ming-E, I really fell in love with the different cities while I was traveling. And I could really see myself in Shanghai and Hong Kong. So when I came back to New York, probably in my 3rd or 4th year, I decided to spend some time looking for jobs. And while I was in Shanghai, I was also inspired to talk with some of the companies that were there. So the company that I was working at that time in New York was called McGarry Bowen. It's part of the Dentsu network. So we actually had an office in Shanghai. So I actually got to meet the ECD there, or the executive creative director there. Unfortunately, that never worked out, but it's okay. I mean, at least I made the connection and I was able to talk to people in different agencies there. So when I got back to New York, I actually spent a lot of time trying to find a job. And after a while, it just seemed like I was pushing too hard and didn't come naturally. So I decided to kind of put it on the side and give it some time and let it kind of stew. So actually, maybe 6 months later, 6 months to 8 months later, I had another colleague in New York who randomly was in Shanghai and also interviewing for an agency. When he came back, he told me like, oh, you know, this agency AKQA, he went for a UX position, but he ended up not taking it. But he came back and told me like, hey, they're actually looking for art directors. So he referred me, and then long story short, within a month, I just was packing my bags from New York and moving to Seattle for a month and then waiting for my visa to go to China. So moving to China was like complete culture shock for anyone, especially coming from North America. And even though my family grew up Asian, it still was quite different, especially being in China versus being Asian American or Asian in a different country. So that was quite interesting. And then after a few years in Shanghai, I decided that I wanted to move to Hong Kong because I miss being close to water and nature. So now I live on a tiny island called Lama in Hong Kong, and we're surrounded by water and green. So now I've been in Hong Kong for 4 years, and I'm currently a senior product designer at Neat, which is a fintech B2B startup here in Hong Kong. So that's my story.
Wow. Very, very cool. Yeah, it's really hard to, I guess, to share all your stories within a couple minutes. But yeah, we remember the old time with Flash as well. But very cool that I guess what I saw is, what is it, Times Square was your work, maybe.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your story. Okay, and last but not least, Ryan, how about you? What's your story?
Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan. Yeah, now I feel like my story are less interesting compared to all the other speakers. So I moved to Canada or Vancouver about 9 years ago, 8-9 years ago, and I was studying interaction design in Vancouver. So after graduation, I just started working as product designer for like local companies. So yeah, so not really like nothing big, different, exciting thing going on there, honestly. So for about 2-3 years, and then I was trying to find a job during the COVID time, which was super hard. So at first I was just looking for local job, but then the kind of like the local market in Vancouver is really competitive. So I started to branch out, trying to find another job at different cities or countries. So I end up finding my current job through ADP list. While my mentor helped me with my interview and can refer me to this position. And I just interview with them, did some contracting work, and now I'm like full-time employee. So I've been working with them fully remote for a little bit over a year. I'm in Vancouver, and most of the teammates are in America. Some are in Europe, Taiwan, I think. So yeah, that's where I'm right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. I'm sure your experiences are also very valuable, especially a lot of people are really interested in, getting a job from the stage or just getting a remote job in general. So I'm sure your story will be really interesting. And thanks for Josie for the reminder. I realized I didn't send the Figma link to the right channel. So everyone, I have shared the FigJam link. If you want to hop on the board, there's a bit more introduction about our panelists. And I've been talking a lot. I'm like, who the heck am I? So I'll also do an introduction as well. So my name is Eva Li. I'm currently the co-founder and also CPO at ImmiSearch. ImmiSearch is a Vancouver-based startup where we are trying to help immigrants to move to Canada in a safe and simple way. Currently, our web platform offers services like you can identify which immigration program is best for you, and also check your eligibility, as well as connecting to a professional when you need help. But before I kind of devote myself into this startup, I was also working as a UX designer for a few years in different startups. Also worked at SAP for a little bit. did design agency as well, and then I moved into product management. Worked my way from kind of product ownership to product manager. But we'll talk about product owner versus product manager topic maybe in a separate time. But I found my love, my passion in kind of helping immigrant like myself try to help them be successful. So earlier this year, I found my business partner Kevin. Then we started this startup called ImmiSearch. Really try to find ways that we can simplify the immigration process for everyone who just want to fight for a chance for a brighter future. So that's why I also get asked a lot in the mentorship session by the mentees, like, oh, how can I get a job from a different country if I'm in Asia with different time zone and different cultures? How do you land a job? And so I reach out to all these amazing mentors who are willing to kind of share their experiences because they have tons of experiences in landing a job in a different country. So I'm gonna share my screen. Let me know if you can't see it. Does that work? Awesome. So for the interest of time, we're gonna be moving on to the first topic. I know I kind of want to do a topic voting, but if you navigate to where the stickers here, you can also kind of find those sticker in this little stamp icon. And you can use different icon if you want, but if there's specific topic or question that you want to ask, feel free to add it there and then we'll revisit that. But because of the interest of time, we're going to go to this very second column called how to land a job in a different country. So maybe we'll give you a minute or two. You can copy sticker if you want to add new question. So we'll let everyone kind of have a chance to play around with this and add any questions and stamp to, I guess, the topic or question that you want our panelists to ask, to answer. And I've never tried it. I keep challenging Fig Jam to see how many people can actually be on the board live without lagging. So we'll see how this goes. I think last time we got about 50-ish people. It was still okay. So we'll see it today. Okay, so everyone can keep voting, but I want to make sure we actually get everyone to share the insight. We'll go with the very first question. What worked for you and how did you land a job in a foreign country? Is there any of our panelists want to answer? If you want to answer, you can either just raise your physical hand or use the actual raise hand function in Zoom so I know who want to answer this question. Anybody want to go first?
I can start.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I think, it does help to physically visit the country before you go, just to get a vibe for the country or the city if you actually like it. Obviously, I know that's a challenge now with COVID. So I think the beauty of also COVID is that now everything has been remote and now you can do everything online. So what you can start with is like figure out the country or the city that you want to go for, and then try to find some companies, products, or studios that you like there. And honestly, just reaching out on LinkedIn or finding people that you have connections with. So it really helped that I had a friend in Beijing, or I had a friend in Shanghai who had a bunch of friends in Hong Kong. So it really is the power of connection and your network. I would say don't be afraid to ask your friends or any of your mentors on ADP lists to ask their connections or if they hear of any opportunities that might fit your role. And obviously with ADP list, I think now there's a lot of people that are all over the globe. So, you can specifically search for people in that country or in that city, and you can ask them for tips or connections or any companies that might fit your particular situation.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. And Ming-E, you have your hands up.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Josie said, especially where sometimes you can't always visit the country depending, but doing research is quite important. And I'm sure people who are thinking about it as well are already researching, and also, I guess, seeing the potential of if it is actually doable in terms of visas or maybe finding a company that supports the kind of transition as well in terms of relocation packages. Sometimes is a benefit in some large companies as well, or even smaller ones, depending. And yeah, getting things ready online as well is really good, like online presence and having your portfolio ready, up to date, highlighting things on LinkedIn of what you're looking for, even like small details as well in your CV. If you, let's say, the PDF format version, if you have your location of what you're open to, is it remote? Is it, you're looking to relocate or willing to relocate, depending on the job. Just having those little indications on the CV is also really helpful, because if someone's looking, maybe they think you're wanting to work remotely, as opposed to actually wanting to go to the country. So that's a little detail there as well.
Yeah. So I can just add on to that. LinkedIn is great for reaching out to people, but I found more success in or easier time on Twitter. A lot of designers, especially for remote work, they are more active on Twitter, and a lot more new company are on Twitter as well. They might be willing to go through the whole sponsorship stuff, visa stuff, to hire you or hire you as a contractor. So yeah, try to follow people on Twitter, reach out to them, tweet about it, like you are looking for a job or something like that. There are many designers on there are willing to retweet your tweet if you just tweet your portfolio, resume, and saying I'm looking for a job.
Yeah, totally. I guess put yourself out there, let people know you're looking for a job. Gotta get your Twitter game. I'm not really on Twitter, but yeah, I guess you have to utilize all social media platforms. That's a really good point. Anyone want to share what didn't work so well? I know there are like good tips on what was working. Was there anything that you tried that like, oh, that was not so great? Yeah, Ming-E.
Yeah, I think this is, I guess, general advice, whether it's interviewing overseas or not. But I did have a recruiter once reach out for an informal chat, and I was like, okay, cool, easy. I can always have an informal chat. But I guess what didn't work for me is kind of just thinking, oh, it's very chilled. I think the advice there would be always be prepared to talk about yourself and your achievements, because you don't know how deep someone is going to go in terms of projects, your processes. Yeah, because I kind of thought, oh, they just want to know a little bit about background and things. But yeah, they kind of went deep. And I think this was just me changing jobs, looking for a new one. So it's a very general sense. But yeah, advice is to be ready to talk about yourself, because I think for me, it's not always that easy, especially if you're having a gap of changing jobs and just getting used to it. Maybe it's a female point of view as well, like not being too proud, but I would advocate it's super important to acknowledge like your achievements and make sure the person who wants a 5-minute chat to know about them.
Yeah, that's actually really good insight. Gotta polish your I guess elevator pitch, be ready whenever people ask about yourself. But yeah, I'm guilty for that as well. Like I often want to hide or feel guilty if I talk too much about myself and my achievement. Is something we definitely need to practice. Great, thanks for, oh yes, Bruno.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I don't know how to raise my hand here using Zoom, so I will just raise my hand, here,
That works.
using camera. Yeah, but anyhow, I really believe that, to land a job across the globe, you need to work in 3 main aspects or pillars. One is basically design and your experience, your portfolio and everything. And I think I have been interviewing some designers to hire here at Copperleaf, and I see a lot of them with, not well prepared portfolios, with not very good case of studies and so forth. And this is something that, really will create a kind of block for you to land the job. The second pillar for me, it's all your immigration plan, your requirements to work in another country legally. And this is also that I already saw some designers that, were attending interview and participating in an interview, and they didn't have, a work visa, for instance, because they were just trying to see if the company would hire them without the visa. And to be honest, it's very hard for a company to hire you if, for instance, that without a work permit visa or something like that. So this is a very important thing. And the third pillar for me, is just the language. I think that for a lot of people can be a very difficult obstacle to overcome. And definitely, I think that this is not, this third pillar is not something that you will learn. Well, that I think that, different people will have, different levels and skills for languages, but this is not something that you learn very quickly, right? You need to study for sometimes years to really be able to speak in another language and so forth. So yeah, if I have to choose one of these pillars to start working right now, would be the language. If you feel, of course, that you don't have this skill, and then you could be preparing and trying to understand more about how to be ready for considering the design aspect and also your immigration plan.
Yeah, very, very good point, Bruno, because gotta think from employers' perspective. They don't want to deal with visa for you. So that's kind of something, if you apply for jobs, for a foreign country, something you need to consider as well. So we'll move on to the next question. I know, Ryan, you have your hands on. Maybe you can address this briefly, and we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah. Well, I just see many people vote for what job portal do you generally use? And I can just want to say it almost doesn't really matter, because if you are looking for a job across country, you will have higher chance to make a connection first than try to find a job. Like I was applying for many US jobs before just through their website, Indeed, all that stuff, but I did not get any callback at all. That did not work for me. Yeah, but I guess this sort of apply to job searching in general. Like apply online is just kind of really slow process.
Yeah, good point. Network. How about other mentors? Did you find a job through just co-applying, like from LinkedIn, I don't know, Glassdoor, Indeed, or you got a referral? Yes, Josie.
Yeah, I know I mentioned LinkedIn, but actually I've never gotten a job from LinkedIn or a recruiter. It's always been through my network. So yeah, just asking friends of friends. But I think that's after like years and years and years of building a network. So I think LinkedIn is not a bad approach. You can at least find the hiring manager or another designer or somebody that maybe you have a connection with or a common interest with on LinkedIn, and you can connect with them and ask them for coffee or virtual coffee, I guess, and kind of pick their brain that way. Because I think applying for jobs directly on LinkedIn may not be the most efficient, but at least working your network and not being afraid to ask people to refer you or at least connect you with another person is, I think, the best way to go.
Yeah, definitely. And Ming-E.
I think for me, I always, depending on, I think, what country you're in as well, I generally go through recruiters, at least for a starting point, to start those conversations, because as well, it's their job to find other people jobs. So it's kind of like, I'll do the recruitment and meet people, and they'll kind of look at my portfolio as well, and they'll have an opinion because they'll know what the job market's like, and they'll see many portfolios as well. So it's good to know how you compare to other people that they see as well. So it's kind of good to have a good idea of the market of the city that you're in or planning to go. So yeah, I would use recruiters as not so reliable, like definitely that's the way, but it's at least something on the side of what you're doing as well on top. So
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Any other comment? I guess we kind of shift away about job portals, as most of us will agree networking is more important than keeping, just keep applying jobs. Any other comments before we move?
Yeah, I have
go
a
ahead,
comment.
Bruno.
Yeah, so basically, when I arrived in Canada, I didn't have any network, so I was just applying through portals and LinkedIn and Glassdoor and so forth. And to be honest, this approach worked very well for me because I was participating in kind of 20 different hiring processes with different companies. So, and Glassdoor was way better than LinkedIn, to be honest, because they have a lot of companies there, and positions and so forth. So I think that this approach can work really well, but you need to be very prepared because you need to have your cover letter, you need to have your resume ready, you need to have all your portfolio very well done as well. So yeah, I think that can work, but it's a little bit more difficult, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are really good comments. So I know there are tons of questions, but for the interest time, I'm gonna move to the orange column. How is job searching process a bit different? I know we kind of already touched on that. So the very first question, which is a really good question, what are some of the red flags to look out for when you're kind of interviewing or looking from a international employee perspective? I'm guessing like red flag is if like culture or like even maybe like a scam type of thing. Yes, Josie.
Yeah, so I mean, there's dozens of red flags. I think they're not necessarily particular to international or local. I think the same red flags can apply for all employers. It's more just that you kind of have to be a bit more familiar with the local or the international market that you're trying to go for. So obviously, like general red flags are like low pay or they don't give you enough benefits. These can apply to both international and local employers in your market. But I do think that kind of similar to what Bruno mentioned, like you just need to make sure that the employer will provide a visa for you. I don't think it's a red flag if they say that they don't provide a visa for you, but you just need to do your due diligence and make sure that the job that you're applying for provides a visa for you if that's what you need. So I think these things can be prevented by you being more transparent about whether or not you need a visa and what type of visa that you're working on. And then another red flag could be, they could lowball you or give you lower benefits because you require a visa or because you're not so familiar with the market. So again, I think it's just doing your own research and making sure that you know that you're on par with the international market that you're applying for in terms of salary and what type of benefits. Because I think different markets offer different things. And each market, obviously, financially is very different economically. Like some places can be very expensive, and then some places can be very cheap. And that's why the salary is a bit different compared to what you might be used to. And I think it's related to this one where depending on where you are, like obviously tech in US is, really high salary, but you also have a 30% tax rate. And then also if you live in San Francisco, that's like the most expensive city in the country. But if you're working in Asia, like my expenses here are pretty low in terms of food, but then rent here is very expensive. So just depends on your lifestyle and what you need. And the salary may be a bit different.
Yeah, obviously, a lot of us are curious about the pay, whether that's similar among different countries or not. But that's a very, very good point. Depending on the lifestyle, what's the city living cost is like, that may vary. We can't just kind of look for, I'm going to go for the higher paid job. You have to consider other factors as well. That's a really good point. Any other comments around this question since we've already touched on this? No, nobody want to talk about money.
I can talk about it. So I'm really lucky to be able to find a US job while living in Vancouver. Vancouver is not kind of cheap city by any means. It's kind of expensive, but my pay from the US company are way higher. Well, so when I was working at my previous job in Vancouver, my pay was kind of lower than the average market. So I was able to triple my salary when I got the US job. And they were paying like Silicon Valley sort of level salary. So yeah, it's really it's really a huge difference. For at least for me. So if that's something you are interested, definitely try that. But also it's hard, because not that many company are willing to pay regardless where you are. Some company will adjust their remote salary based on your location, so you don't actually get that high salary. So yeah, just do more research, try to make more connection, and find out those companies are willing to hire you. Yeah.
Yeah, congratulations, Ryan. Triple pay, that's all what we want. And while living in a city, maybe not as expensive. I also have a lot of friends who are working remotely for a US company, but because the employer know you're in Canada, often it's not really the same pay compared with other employees who live in the state. So that's great. Maybe some of us are really curious. How did you? Is there any advice or tips you want to share with the audience? How you're able to kind of stand out among all the other candidates to kind of get a job, a remote job actually in the state?
I don't know. It's hard for me to say, but I think what's make different is my company had a like contract work period in the interview process. So I didn't do any like whiteboarding or design take home challenges. They just hired me for 2 weeks contract, and it was paid. So it really allowed me to show my strengths in a more like realistic working situation, rather than sort of put me in a spot and work my ass off for it. So that really made a difference for me to show how I work, what design I can do, and how I communicate with them. So it's also easier for them to understand my process better. But then again, like this, so I was really lucky in this regard too. Like I don't think many companies are willing to do that. It's kind of a lot of overhead for the interview process to do that. So yeah, but in general, you really want to try to find a way to show your strengths, show what you do best, whether through portfolio, through interview, or how you talk about your project, all that stuff.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Sounds like, I guess they were looking from 2 weeks contract is going to be quite difficult to hire because most people won't leave their full-time job to do that. So it's also timing. So that's good to know. Ming-E, if you have your hands up.
Yeah, I just had to think about the red flag situation for a little while, because I guess there's things, same with what Josie said, it's international and local, it's kind of similar. But I think in terms of red flags, if there is anything that you're not comfortable with whilst talking to a potential employer, it's a good idea to flag and obviously word it, maybe depending on what it is, word it in a way that it's a concern or something that you'd like a bit more information about as well. Because if it's to do with you moving there, then it's quite important and quite, important for yourself to just feel comfortable with that, and that you're not going into a territory that you might be potentially unhappy with. So I think there's also kind of that space for the employer to hear that. And I think that's where you would then see if they were a good employer or not in terms of caring for their employees, of their concerns, what they can do to help make transition easier and let you be a little bit more content, as I'm sure they would also understand moving is quite a big, it's a big deal. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We got a special request kind of within the same category. Someone's asking, is the pay or salary written on LinkedIn or Glassdoor actually real? Any tips or past stories about how to bargain about salary or pay internship? Any panelists want to just give a quick comment? Yes, Josie.
Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Okay, I will go first. Sorry. They are generally fine. Like, I found they are pretty accurate in terms of for like average salary. Yeah, you can use it as more like a baseline, but then you should always try to ask more than what you see online.
Right, and Josie.
Yeah, very similar comment. Usually, yeah, it's a baseline, and you can still have that conversation with them once you get into the hiring manager process or interview. And I think it also depends on what you need, like as a person. You know, maybe someone with a family, salary is more important. But I think when I was first looking at a job in China back then, it was more for the experience. So I was much more willing to be okay with a bigger pay cut, because that means I can travel all over Asia. And for me, it was just about the experience of living abroad and living in a completely different world. But you can also do things to negotiate things that might, I don't know, it again is very personal, like whatever can make up for that salary. So for example, like would more time off be better for you, or better benefits, or some places give you kind of like a housing allowance, or there are like little things that companies can do to lower your tax salary, or the amount that you get taxed on for your salary. So it just depends on, you know, where you are in your career and your position, that you can, you know, is salary the most important, or is it about the experience, or is it about benefits or other things that the company may be able to provide if salary is a bit lower than expected?
That's a very good point. Salary is not the only way to get compensated. If you value vacation days, or, you know, getting off work on time, those are important to bring up as well. And I don't know if anyone has read this book called Never Split the Difference. It's a book around negotiation. It has a lot of good tips around like salary negotiation. One of the things they say is like, never be the first one give out the number, which is an interesting tactic. So you can try to practice. You may feel very uncomfortable, but that's one of the tips that they actually offer in the book. So we're gonna move on to the next topic. Unfortunately, I'm disappointed nobody want to learn about networking, as we talked about how important networking is. But we'll move on to the green column, which is, do people practice design differently? How does design process look like in other countries? I'm very curious about this one as well.
Yeah, maybe I can comment on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Bruno.
I don't know. I think that, to be honest, there's not a lot of difference. Of course, there are different levels of maturity for each company. So you can go, you know, I don't know, you can search for a company in a specific country and you will find out that that company is not very mature regarding design, but another company in the same country can be very mature. And mature in terms of design processes, the way that, you know, they treat design inside the company, how much important is design for the whole organization, and all this kind of stuff. So, and I think that nowadays a lot of this knowledge about design is very is in the community, right? The online community, and we are, creating, new processes and sharing new techniques around the world. So I don't think that it's that there are a lot of differences. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting to know. I guess maturity about the design team is a way of putting it. Maybe it's not really a difference between countries, but obviously at different companies or different cities, the maturity of the design team may be different. How about Ming-E? You kind of worked at quite a few different countries. So with Josie, do you notice anything really different?
It depends on the company, I think, because I've now worked in 2 fintech companies in Sydney, and in terms of the design process, yeah, it's pretty similar, and working with engineering as well it's quite similar, but it might be the fact that it's both in fintech as well. But in terms of design processes, I guess it's quite a broad topic as well, because it could mean within the design team. There's other jobs where you can work very siloed doing design, and you work in a smaller team, but there's a design team, but you design differently to what the other designers are doing. Yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that one, because I think it varies so much. And I think with product design, for me as well, when looking for a job, and with Figma kind of being the main design tool now, Adobe, doing websites in Adobe and like Sketch is I guess depending on what country as well, maybe the company is or how they work, it can vast differently. But I think for me, I'd want to stay up to date using Figma, because when you move another job, they'll probably likely be using Figma if it's within product design. So yeah, it's a really broad question, so it has a broad answer.
So I guess the comment's a bit similar to Bruno. It's not so much about countries, it's the industry, the product, tool, the popularity of the tool may be different, but essentially we all use the really, the tools like Figma. InVision's like the old one now. Nobody uses InVision anymore. Back in the days, that was like the big hit. Yes, Ryan.
Yeah, so I think for design process, yeah, it's more kind of based on the companies, but it's fairly possible that you will have a very different working culture in general if you move to different countries. Like for China, like they have really different working culture, especially in tech compared to like North America or Europe. So that might be something you want to do more research on. Is can you like fit into those working culture? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. For the interest of time, unfortunately, we gotta move on to the next topic, and we'll have maybe a few more minutes at the end. I know nobody vote for networking, but this is an opportunity for us to network. So towards the end, I'm gonna ask everyone kind of to share their profile. Maybe you can kind of follow up offline on LinkedIn or anywhere else you want to do. But we'll just take one more question. Does remote work for foreign companies require visa sponsorship? Then maybe a Ryan question. You're the only one who's working remotely.
Yeah. I think it kind of depends on the companies as well. My company are willing to hire people as contractor, so no visa sponsorship at all. But some companies don't even want to deal with that. So like they won't even like a lot of US remote job only for US citizen. So for those type of job, you are kind of just out of luck. Yeah, so it's really kind of depend on the companies.
Great. I want to make sure we wrap up on time. I know there are a lot of good questions there which are voted, but it's going to be a bit difficult to go through all of them. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you have specific question, connect with our mentor. They are all on ADP list. So maybe they have a session ready. This is their LinkedIn profile. So connect with them, and I'm going to use this time to also give you a chance, like share your LinkedIn social media. Make sure you also slap a profile picture of yourself so we can actually, see your face. So just to spend a few minutes doing that right now. So, and then I don't know if there's actually fun stuff that you can do. You can even add hearts and stuff. It's just pretty fun. Does anybody use fake? Actually, I've never used fake jam. I keep getting confused. Is it Figma jam or fake jam? At work, I only use it fake jam. Yeah, so go ahead, copy and paste your lovely profile photo and your LinkedIn handle. And I just want to say huge thank you for all the panelists today, spending an hour with us, answering all these great questions, and also the audiences who are also being such a great, engaging group of people. Lots of good questions as well. But next time, I really got to figure out how to play music. I think you will really add a little extra something with these remote workshops. Okay. Yeah, and don't just share your link, share your photos as well if you want to make it a little more personal. I don't know, Jarrell in the call. Jarrell and I did some workshop. I really like that, the human touch aspect. We get to see each other's face and connect with each other. Yes, and then there's the resizing thing we have to do. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Let's see. Stop share. So we'll keep the board running for a while. Please continue, doing networking, as I cannot stress how important networking is. A lot of people ask me how to land a job, where they're spending a lot of time polishing their resume and portfolio, which are very important in applying for jobs. But a lot of time, you just have to let people know, especially designer in the community, that you're ready to be hired. What's your superpower as a designer, what you enjoy doing. That's also very important. So, and you don't really have to think of networking as, to like talk about yourself. Also go out there and actually have fun. That's important too. Let people know your personality as a human, because at the end of the day, we just want to work with people, right? Because we spend a lot of time with that. We want to work with people that we enjoy working with. So I think that's really important as well. But we're going to wrap up here now. Please continue on the fake jam board. Connect with us again, but just want to say thank you for everyone who come up today, for those who stay up really, really late. I hope this is useful, and if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to us offline. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.